Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the DM's Guild space. And this week, I'm joined by Andrea Maffia. Thank you, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, I thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's very, very nice to be here. I've heard many of the previous interviews, and now I'm happy to be here on this side of the screen.
I'm always very flattered to hear that my guests have sometimes watched some of my stuff, just because sometimes it feels like I'm just throwing them out there. It gives me the sort of warm fuzzy feeling, in the same way that when on the DM's Guild when you watch your sales go up, it's kind of like that. But no, I guess kind of the first question for the people listening is what sort of products, what have you been known for in the DM's Guild?
Oh, well, I've done several products in the last almost 2 years. Most of them are adventures. Adventures is the thing that I mostly like to write down and which I most enjoy to do. And maybe the projects for which I am more known are collaborative projects that are collected as the Old World series. They are all collected in a bundle called Tomes of the Old World, but they are different books collecting monsters and artifacts and now NPCs and soon also adventures that are inspired by European folklore, myths, fairy tales, and whatever comes from the European culture.
Yeah, no, it is kind of like an amazing series of books that it's kind of like, it started from Monsters of the Old World?
Yeah, that was the first one, yeah.
And then I guess one of my questions is why do you like adventures? What kind of drew you to like adventure writing compared to like, again, monsters or items or player options?
Oh, well, the thing is, for me, writing for DMsGuild is more like an hobby than a job. I do have my full-time job, and then when I come home and I want to relax and spend some time thinking about anything else, D&D is a way for doing that. And of course, when I am with my friends, we play some game. I can be the DM, I can be a player. I have fun in both ways. But when I am alone, thinking about a place where I would like to be, a situation where I would like to be, and start writing about that is a way of escaping from the daily routine and doing something completely different. And when I think that this imaginary trip is good enough, then I try to make it available for other people on the DM's Guild.
Interesting. So is that very much your like creation process of you have an idea, you kind of think over it for like a good amount of time until you hit that point of like, I should turn this in, I should write this up.
Yeah, indeed. What I usually do is that I think about a specific place or environment. That's usually where the idea starts from. So I have an adventure that is completely based on walking on a mountain because I went hiking during the week, and then I was thinking, oh my God, this could be very, very nice. I have an adventure that is set in the desert because I was watching a movie on TV that was in a desert. And so I said, oh my God, how will it be to have an adventure in the desert? What could happen there? What could the characters face while crossing a desert or whatever else? So this is mainly the process. And then while I start thinking about the plot of the adventure, then the other things come out. And the nice thing of doing adventure is that you can invent one specific monster, you can invent one specific spell, or maybe an artifact, a magic item that could fit that adventure, and then you are there. Well, what I'm not really into is the idea of, okay, now I have to fill a list of 100 magic items. That could be very difficult for me as creating process.
Yeah, as a designer, as an adventure creator, you kind of have the flexibility to, if you want to, you can just use existing monsters, or again, you can be like, I'm feeling a little bit spicy. I'm gonna design a monster today. And it's interesting that you mentioned how you start off with a location, because I think what's interesting about when it comes to adventure designing is you do have so many different approaches. There is obviously the starting from a location, starting from an event, a particular character. And yeah, I really like hearing how you very much draw inspiration from like hiking and just thinking, yeah, this would be kind of interesting. The adventure that you based on a mountain, what was the name of that one?
Oh, well, that is called March into the Peak,
Okay.
the one that is already published, but also the one adventure that I wrote for Tales of the Old World, the upcoming book of the Old World series. That one is also based on the alpine landscape.
Which I suppose is it giving too much away to mention what sort of European like folklore or legend it's kind of based on, or?
Oh yeah, that's not so easy, because this time we really have tried to go deeper in that folklore that maybe is not so well known around the world. There are some adventures that are based on famous tales. I mean, there is an adventure that is completely based on the tale Hansel and Gretel, the German tale Hansel and Gretel. So it's very well known, but we really try to go into the most original version of the tales. And the one that I was mentioning, the one that is set in the Alps, is about a very old tale that is about this King Laurino, who was a dwarf king living in the Alps, and was in love with this wonderful princess called Similde. But their love story was not a very good one. I mean, they get married, but she wasn't very happy about that. So she took the first opportunity to find another man and to run away.
Wow.
So most of the story is based on that. The adventurers find themselves between these two characters, so that they have to understand the relationship between the two of them. And that's also a nice story, because it's that kind of stories that are used to explain how something was created. And specifically, this one is very based on a particular chain of mountains that you can hike in the Alps, in the Dolomite. And this particular chain of mountain, when the sun set, becomes quite pink.
Yeah.
So it is usually compared to roses. And so all these myths is about the roses that Similde used to have in her garden.
It's always fascinating when you hear about the sort of like natural world occurrences that legends and folklore have kind of tried to give like reason for.
Yeah.
It's amazing like that. And I think what's kind of interesting, taking like existing lore or again legends of like taking like even from D&D or the real world, is you do have like so much control about how much you lean into the story or subverting it, playing with expectations. Because like, again, I imagine most people know the Hansel and Gretel story of, two children going in and ending up in an oven. Or I think it depends, because there's some versions where they get eaten. There's some versions where they escape. But you can really sort of play around with that format, and just by having like the oven being a mimic, I think would be you need a little bit more than that. But that's an adventure right there. You can remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, of course, stories have different versions, and that's not the problem. I mean, when we wrote about the Old World series, the idea was not we are going to tell you which is the right one. And it is important these kind of stories, those embedded in folklore, have different versions, and those different versions comes out from the fact that these are stories that are told by grandparents to grandchildren. So of course, anytime each generation has the different twist, the different idea that comes out there. This was our ways of telling the stories. And when you are so happy about playing D&D, and D&D, of course, is almost a matter of telling stories.
Yeah.
At that point, you think about, wow, this story is something that I've heard so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Why shouldn't I create my own version and tell that version? And that is the fun.
Yeah, and especially like I think the act of writing up an adventure gives you it gives you a lot of flexibility, and you, as even the act of writing it out, you realize there are small things that you kind of have control over, and you can be like, well, no, it would be kind of interesting if this happened, which is slightly slightly off from what may be expected, but it's taking the story and adjusting it to the medium of D&D. No, interesting. So you mentioned as well that you've been writing on the DMs Guild for roughly 2 years.
Yeah. I think in January or February it's going to be 2 years.
Wow, yeah. Happy anniversary.
Well, as I mentioned, it is something that I started doing as a hobby. It is something that I mainly do with my boyfriend when we are here at home and sitting and chatting, and we start discussing about D&D. We are both DMs, so sometimes we chat about our adventures, and there, while we are talking about different ideas that we had, we start thinking, oh, this could be something fine to write about. This could become a subject for an adventure. And we do not publish tons of things because of that, because it is not our main occupation. But the nice thing, I mean, that is our intention, is that it is something we had fun with.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the people that are going to read that, we hope that they are going to find inside those words the same fun that we had when creating.
So I'm curious then, is a lot of your adventures slightly more of a collaboration with you and your partner then?
What do you mean?
So is it more like the adventures that you publish, is it like, do you handle all the writing, or is it you just discuss a lot of the ideas with your partner and then you both do a little bit of writing? Or is it?
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Well, let's say that what we usually do is to discuss the ideas, and then we write separately.
Yeah.
So there are some adventures in which we have collaborated, but he was actually the writer, while there are some adventures in which I am the writer.
Yeah.
But we collaborate also for several many things. So, for instance, I'm more in doing some sketches and drawing, while he is very good in the layout.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually take part to each of the projects together.
No, it's lovely. I've had the joy of speaking to like a few sort of couples who are both into DMsGuild, and it's always lovely to hear like how they sort of bounce off each other's strengths, or bounce ideas off each other. My next question was okay, so 2 years ago then, what was the first thing that you published?
Oh, the very first thing that I published was the English title is The Magic Academy. It's still there, but the very first adventure that I published was the Italian version of that. So this is another interesting thing of the DMsGuild. I started to write down in Italian because when I wrote notes for my party as a DM, of course, those are in Italian.
Yeah, it would be a little bit weird if you like you were an entirely Italian party and you're just like, I'm going to make my notes in English just to be on the safe side.
You never attended to a session of playing D&D in Italy, because actually there are many English words coming out because many of the manuals are just in English.
Oh, true.
So you have this kind of mixed discourse in which we talk in Italian, but then when you mention a name of a spell, you mention it in English because you don't know which is the Italian translation for that.
Fair. Huh.
So we are used to put some English in our sessions. But now we are having more and more manuals in Italian, so things are becoming easier. But still, on the DMsGuild, the public, the Italian audience is really a small one. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about, if I want these adventures to be reachable to a larger audience, I need to translate them in English. And that's where the idea of collaborating with other people from other countries came out, and where the Old World series came out. Actually, it was something like, can I find people that are from Europe as well? And this is easier, of course, because of the time zone, to talk about the English of my adventure. And there a group started to be created.
No, fantastic. So yeah, you were very much at the ground floor, or you were there at the start for the Old World series.
Yeah, I was the person who created the Facebook group that has been used for the whole project. I was not the coordinator of all the books. We shared the responsibility. I was the coordinator of monsters. I think that came out just like who wants to be the coordinator, and everybody was, I imagine,
Just
staring at me like,
has.
you did the group now. You have to do that. And it wasn't easy at all the first time because we still didn't know each other, so we needed to start meeting and knowing and discussing the things, and then we to take the turns in changing the roles. So I was a writer for the whole 4 books. I've been coordinator for monsters. I'm now co-coordinating Tales together with George Comis, who is Greek but has better English than me. And so we shared the responsibility of these books. And I also think this is a very nice thing about these books, that, as you were mentioning before, when you collaborate, this idea of knowing the strengths and of each of the people taking part could help in having a better work at the end of the day. Of course, you have to share royalties, but but that's not a problem for me. I mean, doing this as a hobby and not as my main job, it is a very good option for me.
I think that's what's fantastic about some of the large scale collaborations, especially when you're dealing with like 8 to 10, more members, contributing on one project. You get to see just a wide range of different sort of skill sets, and that's what I always love. And one of the most enjoyable thing that I'm curious if you feel the same about. But when you get to work with someone multiple times, and you, again, that relationship builds to finally sort of understanding that, oh no, this person is fantastic at this, and I kind of want them to sort of end up with this. With each product that you kind of collaborate with someone, you can sort of see that, yeah, we've really hit our stride.
Well, yeah, I think that's not just that. I mean, yeah, you are completely right. You can find that even when you think about one side of the job, I mean, for instance, editing, you know that there's someone that is very good in finding all the little numbers that are not going well there. You know, there is someone who is very, very good in switching the text in a way that is better understandable.
Yep.
And this is very important when you have a group of people that are not native English speakers. When you go to the layout, there is someone that is very good in find the right spot to put that image in.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are very good in changing the image to fit that spot, so it's completely true. But also you find that while you start knowing the people and understanding how they work, how their process of creating work, you also understand the timing that they need to work.
Yeah.
You understand how to deal with them. I mean, there are people that are happy to have all the work all together and then organize their time.
Mm-hmm.
People that prefer to have a new task when they completed the previous one.
Yeah.
And when you start understanding this stuff, everything goes much more.
Yeah. And I imagine, especially as a project coordinator, yeah, it's things that you kind of you pick up, and trying to balance. Again, I found that in the projects that I've led, is sometimes I have made the assumption that the way I work, which is very much like I have a deadline in the future, I will sit down and I will just sort of like, there is the entire thing, rather than sort of bit by bit. And again, so some people are, again, they prefer to work as you kind of said, like bit by bit. And yeah, it's always interesting when you bump into someone and you're just like, oh, fair, no, that makes sense. Like I could work like that. I've just been hardwired, or I've been working this way for so long that I don't know how to do anything else.
Well, there's also the fact that people have different sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So also it's a matter of avoiding conflict, and sometimes conflict can arise. It happened during our project that we had conflicts, and we had to manage those conflicts. Also, it's a matter of different expertise and different experience in terms of time doing things. So you have some very young authors, both in terms of age, both in terms of time spent in doing this stuff. There are people that are much more professional. I mean, that do this thing as their main job. So of course, maybe they are a bit more rigid because they've developed a routine of work on that. So of course, it's more difficult for them to adjust because they have much more work of that type to do during the day. So I mean, again, it's not a matter of finding the best way to do things, but to find the best way to do things together.
Yeah. Like to sort of accommodate and balance out, to make sure that everyone kind of is covered. I think you bring up an interesting point before about when it comes to layout people and particularly editors. Because I think, again, I feel like there are like many different subclasses of editors. There are the editors who just, again, as you said, have that sort of mechanical crunch, who can look at an adventure and be like, this is probably going to be a little bit clunky. There's people who can look at the whole overarching story. They can see like how every event in the story takes place, and they go, no, this doesn't flow quite right. And then there's the grammar wizards who just look at every comma out of place, and they go, no, that one needs to go. And I think it's fascinating when you find the editor that kind of clicks with your writing. I imagine with hiring editors for if we go with Monsters of the Old World, then the one you were the coordinator for. How many editors did you have for that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that we had something like 3 or 4 editors. I don't remember because it was a bit ago.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that's the first in the series, and although Monsters of the Old World was something of it was a huge success, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, that is a project that gives really the idea of what you were saying before about the different kind of editors that you need. In that case, we really had separated editors for the monster stats and for the lore, because really those are two different things. While, for instance, now with Tales of the Old World, we have adventures, so we have much more text. And in this case, for instance, we had just one editor, that is Simon Collins, that I really wish to thank for the big work that he did alone by himself. But again, the idea is maybe the tip that we can give to the people on the guild is that you can decide for a different editor according to the kind of product that you are using, and you can ask advice to people that have worked to similar project about the editor that you could use, or you can just have pick the Monsters of the Old World and go to the first page and look who was the editor. That's another possibility for doing that.
It's better because otherwise you have the maybe very strange situation where all your lore sections have say this probably needs a +6. It's fascinating, and I think that's like, again, the ongoing catchphrase of hire an editor for this podcast. It probably should have an asterisk where it's like hire a appropriate editor for your project, and that kind of comes with the experience of making more products to kind of realize that, oh no, I mean, again, while there are plenty of editors that are talented enough to sort of cover all your bases, but there is a distinct different skill in being able to finely comb a monster like a stat block versus like a paragraph about what the monster eats.
yeah, and it can be even different when you go for a subclass. If you compare that with the stat block of a monster, that's a completely different kind of balancing. And of course, you have these rules that you find in the Dungeon Master's Guide that is very useful for that, but that works very well as a base. Then when you start let's take the example of a monster. You create a monster, then you try this monster with some players. Maybe you have a party that is made, I don't know, with a cleric, a wizard, and a fighter, and then it works in a certain way. You do that with a different party, and you realize that the challenge of that monster is completely different. And when you see many of them, and you have tried many of them, you start to have your rules of thumb to decide where to put things. So you start thinking, okay, I need something as a ranged, something as a melee attack, then I need this and that. Those are things that there are people that are more experienced, that are on the guild, that are really good at it, and they can find these little things even before you try the monsters with the party. Then you adjust small things, but they already can give you some very good advice how to deal with that. So really, the nice thing that I like about Dungeons Master Guild, and one of the reasons for which I've spent 2 years in doing that, and while I'm happy to having this kind of interviews, that there is this idea of being a bit of a community, to start knowing each other. Of course, there are tons of people, so it's impossible that everybody knows everybody. But it is nice that you can start knowing some names, trying to understand what people do, and get to communicate together. It's very easy to reach people that are working on DMsGuild. Every time that I try to write a DM on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, I always find an answer. You can really use any kind of source from the other people, and usually they are happy to share, to maybe not to collaborate if they do not have time or resources to do that, but to give you an advice or tell you what to read about that or whatever.
And I think, again, to be on the receiving end of someone asking for like particular advice or asking to sort of join on a collaboration, as an author, it's flattering. It feels really nice to be like, oh, this, some like I like. It's even again, being in the game for like, like as I guess, I think we have like, so I'm coming up to 2 years. I think. Wait, no, I'm not in July. So I think you're about I was about to say you're about 5 months older than me in terms of
as a writer.
Yeah, as a writer. And yeah, it's what am I trying to say? I guess I basically, I'm agreeing with everything that you say, and it's the nicest way that I can sort of put it. I guess to sort of cycle it back to your creative process as a whole. Then, so we've spoken about collaborations, we've spoken about getting started and everything. When it comes to sitting in front of your keyboard, you've got some writing to do. What's your favorite part of the project?
Oh, well, the thing that I like the most in is when I have this idea of the kind of setting that I want to bring. And then you start thinking about which could be the little element that could give the feeling that I have in my mind. So, for instance, could be a description where you talk about the color of the grass or the shape of the trees or whatever that could help you in giving the image that you have in your head. And then the second thing is that you have to transpose this to D&D. So I start thinking, okay, let's think about an encounter here. So I'm going to put this monster that I find really suitable for this forest, let's say. So this monster, I think it's nice for a forest. But then I start thinking, what should make this encounter not just an encounter in a forest, but an encounter in the forest that I was thinking about?
Yeah.
So I start thinking, no, this is an ancient forest, so I want trees to be big. How big? And what should happen if there is a big tree here? Maybe the thieves can hide behind the tree. Maybe the monk can climb that tree. Don't know. You start thinking about how the particular environment that you are imagining in your mind can interact with the different players that are in. So on the other side, I mean, if I am in a plain desert, what should this mean for someone who is attacking from a distance, or for someone who is attacking from in the melee situation, or someone who's trying to hide. So this is this idea of trying to fit the mechanics of D&D playing in the kind of environment that I have in my mind, in a way that I hope is going to bring to both to the DM and to the players I would say the exact image that I have in my mind. Of course, that's impossible, but an image that is as much closer as
yeah. I mean, it's again. What I kind of love about this is I think I come about writing adventures and encounters from the other side. So sometimes I think I kind of plan out the characters and actions and the monsters, the things that you're going to be encountering. So sometimes I start with rather than where you have the image of the ideal location that you have and how that can sort of translate to the mechanics. I start with what the players may be facing, what sort of challenge prompts them, whether it's a social challenge or a combat challenge. And then I'm like, well, what sort of environment would make this interesting? And what's great is, obviously, like both sort of techniques are good, or there's no right one. I just like that, because I sometimes I think with your style, you end up with very sort of evocative locations where everything has a place, and it all, again, so everything kind of feeds into one another. Whereas I think the downside of what I kind of do is it provides an interesting what's the word? I guess it provides an interesting encounter, because it's a unique combination of, let's say, you're fighting a bugbear on a cliff. Imagine not the most exciting example I could have thought of. I take an example I did recently, which was fighting a froghemoth in a sort of thunderstorm. Which the froghemoth is, because I started with I knew the party had to face a froghemoth, and I realized that the froghemoth had a weakness to lightning. So I was like, how can I get lightning in here? And I was like, well, I should just make it a huge storm. And then obviously with the lightning bolts going around the battlefield, it kind of makes it hopefully a little bit more exciting. I guess I'm just comparing our styles and just sort of seeing the differences.
Yeah, but I see there a commonality, that is the fact that when, of course, you start having some idea in your mind, like a plot, like a character, like whatever. But then if you want to transpose that to an adventure, and especially an adventure that is not going to be played by you as a DM, but someone else, you have to convey the challenge that you want the players to face. That is the core of any session of D&D. You create a challenge for your players. Of course, you can have many different type of challenges. I mean, in my adventures, maybe the environmental challenges are stronger than the social ones, for instance, because I start from the environment. So maybe that's the reason why. But again, the idea is, when you start writing down, you have to explain that DM why how that challenge can happen. So, for instance, the fact that you put lighting, I could just write down, I put a storm here, and that could seem just like a background of the thing, like a description. But then, if you can explain that the environment, the NPCs that are there, the number of NPCs that you have chosen to be there, depends on the fact that you can create a tactic for the groups of enemies that the players are facing, or it's because the environment can create a challenge as well. So, for instance, in the adventures the adventure that I wrote for Tales of the Old World, there is this part in which they are on a glacier. And so it's a difficult terrain for them, and it's slippery, but it is not for the enemy. So at that point, the challenge changed completely. And this is something that of course, it's in my mind, but I have to well explain that for the DM who is going to read, because he or she is going to understand that the kind of challenge that is posed to her or his characters is completely different than the kind of challenge that he would have just by meeting that monster in another environment, or with other monsters, or with some NPCs helping them. This is another thing that comes out often in the adventures, and I always try to spot if the author did it, let's say, right. I would say balance it.
Yeah.
That the characters can make a use of the NPCs that are presented along the adventure.
Yeah.
Of course, the DM could just write down, it is impossible that this NPC is going to help the party. That's a possibility, but it's never creating role play.
And in fairness, any D&D adventuring party, if they encounter something that is meant to be an enemy but is vaguely cute in any way, they're going to befriend it, and it's going to become the new pet.
Yeah, that's a possibility, and that's nice. Let's create a role play. Even, for instance, the example that you gave, it's one that I really like about, because it doesn't just create role playing between the DM and the players, but also among the players, because they are going to have a conflict about who is going to care about that small thing. You give them a cup of old bear, and everybody's going to love that. So they're going to play together to get some food to the old bear, and then is when you create this gaming between the players. And to me, as a DM, that is the best part of the game, where you can start to go on the background and leave them playing. That means that you have created a good situation for them to play, and you can have fun, because at that moment you are not alone in constructing the story, but the story is on the table.
Yeah, I guess, no, I think you are right. Yeah, I think it does come back to how the challenge, whatever challenge you have in your mind, and how you translate that into the D&D system. And yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think I do like the adventures that, or like, the moments where there's more consideration to the enemies in terms of like their motivations, or just because I think, again, realistically, there's not too many people out there that I think would always willingly fight to the death. Like, for example, if hypothetically speaking, if I were a bandit and if I was trying to ambush a group of people on the road and they started flinging fireballs out, I'm out.
I will run away.
I'm out. I'm just like, listen, all right, I didn't know who we were dealing with. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like, here's my money. Here is here's my sword. I'm gonna go become a baker. This is clearly not the life for me. And
that will be nice. Then you will have another NPC in your adventure, a new baker in the village. Baker is going to be someone who will be scared of your party.
Yeah.
So you will be sure that everything that you will ask to that baker is going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect character that you can use.
Yeah, with it. So you have like the NPC you meet in Act 1. By Act 3, they've settled in a shop, and the players have to go to that shop and just be like, oh no, please, again, I'm really sorry. No, fantastic. So I guess to capture the other side of the coin, then. So we've got your kind of favorite part, and that is like bringing the image in your mind to life. Do you have like a least favorite part?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a part that I don't really like, especially because for me, DMsGuild is more as a hobby. It is the part of advertising.
Yeah.
That is a part that I really hate, because I always feel that when you have to write about what you have written, so you have to give some kind of judge about what you have done, and of course you try to convey a message that you did the best that you can, but I'm always there thinking like, maybe that's too much, that's not that good. Maybe I should put some advice about the limits that are there, but then I think, no, okay, I have to write down on Twitter, and I have a limited amount of characters. I cannot start explaining the whole product.
You can't be like, I really like this project, but I did kind of cut some corners here, and it's, you kind of have to be like, this is the best thing I've done. you should buy this thing. And yeah.
Yeah, and also when you are creating these collaborative projects, you have to start to say, please, people, do a post about that. We all need that. I know it's not easy. I know you have not that much time, but we need that because everybody have worked. And of course, it's correct that all the people that were involved had some kind of award for the work that they did. So we need advertising, and you have to push people. And that is something that I really hate, because I have no problem in pushing people or pushing myself in writing, because I know that at the end of the day, I had to push me, but when I end with the work, I can read it again, and you feel proud of yourself for pushing yourself and doing that. Well, advertising is that kind of thing that I push myself to do, but then, of course, you have the royalties. That's the thing.
Yeah, you don't necessarily always see the immediate like feedback and stuff like that, or the result of it. And it's the problem where with writing, there is a point where you're finished, you're done. Technically, there's no end to that advertising. Like I fall in the habit of, once I release a product, I do the advertising before, I do it for about a week after, nothing.
Yeah, that's quite common. But also because advertising would require some peculiar skills.
Yeah.
And I feel that I do not have the skills. So I know that I have to do that, because otherwise products on the guild could not be as easy to find. I mean, yeah, of course, the very first days they are there on the home page, but then you have so many products that if you do not advertise, it is possible that people do not even see your product. So it is important to do that if you think that it deserves. But on the same time, I would like to have sometimes in these collaborative projects someone who says, I'm an expert in advertising and I will take care of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before, but advertising, there's a reason why there are companies like advertising agencies, entire groups of people who are skilled in advertising. And already as DMsGuild creators, we are wearing many hats. We're writers, sometimes we're layout, sometimes we're artists too. It's cartographers, you've got like editors. It's like you're trying to do everything. And yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if there is some form of advertising thing for the DMsGuild in a year or so.
Well, let's see. Or maybe someone is going to put some comment to this video and say, I'm an expert in advertising, hire me.
Just because I think I have seen some talks about it. And I don't know, it's interesting as well seeing that there are a lot of shifts from some of the established DMsGuild authors to starting Kickstarters. And the advertising for Kickstarters is much more... I guess time consuming, because it's ongoing. It's you kind of like you have a month or so, and you kind of need to be doing the daily thing. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the people who do the Kickstarters find themselves being better at doing advertising.
Yeah, that could be a possibility indeed. Yeah. That could be a thing to look to the CV of someone to understand.
Yeah.
You want to include them in your project for advertising. Yeah. Also, I mean, advertising on DMsGuild is also something that is an evolving process. I mean, if I think when I started and when we are now, the DMsGuild itself produced a different initiative to change the thing. I'm thinking about the weekly newsletter. That is something that really can change the destiny of a product. Yeah. The fact that you can relate a product to an official product that is coming out now. I mean, for instance, now Icewind Dale is there, and in Tales of the Old World, we have several adventures that are based on Scandinavian places or the Alps. Of course, they're not all of them, but there are many. So this is a way for having your product better advertised. Also, I've seen this initiative of the pick of the staff.
Yep.
By drive-through, and this was one thing that happened with Monsters of the Old World, for instance. It didn't exist when we launched Monsters of the Old World, but then it happened, and we were very happy about that.
Was it? I think it existed for drive-through, didn't it? And
Yeah.
now they've started implementing it for DMsGuild as well. And yeah, I think Monsters of the Old World was the first or one of the first.
Yeah, I think it was among the first 2 or 3 products on DMsGuild that had it. And we were completely surprised, because as we started, we didn't have so many contacts with the organization of DMsGuild. We exchanged some emails to be sure that everything was okay with the fact that somehow these monsters, these artifacts, these characters are coming from some kind of setting.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be sure that everything that we did was setting neutral, as is required on DMsGuild. So we had some exchange, but we didn't ask about being put in the weekly newsletter or being picked. It was just by chance. So the nice thing is that you don't have to be a big name or to know someone to fall in those things. They're really reading the products. Yeah, and I love that.
I know it's fantastic. I mean, what is it? The community managers, so like Lisa and I believe Jack. They are they're fantastic, and yeah, I think again they deserve as much praise as we can give them for helping the products of the DMsGuild kind of get the attention that they kind of deserve, because there's a lot of products. There's a lot. It's exploding, and it's great to see. It's fantastic. Then I guess so to look over your 2 years then. What is something that you wish you'd learned earlier?
Oh, yeah. One thing that I have been struggling a lot during the last 2 years is the pricing.
Yeah.
Pricing of products. It's always a thing that I've struggled with. I mean, I tried to read along the discussions that were going on the different Discord and Facebook groups and whatever, and you find people that gives you some kind of rule. So if the product has this amount of page, then you have to do that price. You have people saying that putting things pay what you want is always bad. You have many kind of dogmas that are given by people, but along the time I'm a mathematician, so I do like working with numbers, and I started to keep statistics of my products, and I found out that there are not so strict rules, and it's not just a matter of how long is the product, but as usually is for any selling, is the fact that you have to meet the demand where you're publishing something. So if you're publishing something that does not really meet the demand of that moment, maybe the price should be quite low, or vice versa. You can increase the price when you have a product that you really think that is matching the demand of the market at that moment. And this is something that maybe people don't say you at the beginning, because of course when you ask how much should I price my product, the answer is a general one, while I would always answer now, it depends on the product. Let me know what it's about. Let me know what's inside, because it can really depend. And sometimes it could be also important to change the price of your product along the time. That's a thing that I've done with many of my products. If I go back 2 years ago, and I think my thinking was, okay, if I find the right price, then it's going to be there forever. And I've changed my mind on that. And I went back to improve my product according to the price that they had. So I was thinking, for having this price, maybe I should put there something more, and then I did that.
Yeah, no, 100%. The pricing is difficult, and it's the sort of case of like, you can try and compare your product to other products, but it's never quite that sort of like one-to-one. And I think sometimes I felt like I guess one thing I've learned in particular and stuff like that is the launch is quite important.
Yeah.
And I know in the past that sometimes I think I have been sort of burned by potentially having a higher price than what it potentially should have been. And that's always a tough one, is because it's a lot of people within the the DMs Guild and stuff like that. We are pushing towards like trying to get people not to undervalue their work.
Yeah, that's important. That's
It
the
is.
other side of the fact. Yeah.
And it's hard to balance. It's like you can't. Sometimes I think sometimes with the sheer amount of products on the DMs Guild, it is hard to get that balance of appropriately selling a product, as much to that you feel you've been not, again, you don't want to tie your success to the number of sales of products get. But there is a thing of like, okay, I would like I would like the things I make to sell. But then also, I don't want to undersell myself by, because like if I set something like, a 300-page document for £2, that will sell probably a good number of copies and stuff like that. Is that an appropriate value for the amount of work I put in? Probably not. But how do you balance the two?
Yeah, because it's also a matter of being respectful of the work done by others. I mean, of course, you can even give your work as a gift if you want, but you have to know that there are people there that maybe put a lot of effort and cannot afford to give it for free. Yeah. Because that's their main job, and so you are creating some kind of unfair competition when you do that. So it's really a difficult balance, and at the beginning, especially if you don't know the other people around, you are not aware of that. And I think that's something that I would have known at that time.
I think again, thank you for bringing it around. Yeah, and yeah, I think especially when it comes to collaborative pieces of work as well, because you not only have the concern of like, am I appropriately pricing this self for me? It's like, oh, the 4 or 5 other people in this project, I want to make sure that they get a fair amount for their contribution, and obviously they're putting in their time for a percentage royalty rather than yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, I'm 100%. I'm with you on that one. Wow, fair. So I guess looking to the community. Well, again, talking about the community and stuff as a whole. Then, is there anyone in the DMs Guild community in particular that kind of inspires you?
Oh, well, the first thing is, of course, the person that I collaborate the most is my partner. His name is Simone Rossi Tisbeni. You can find him on DMsGuild as well. And also, I have to say that collaborating has been really important for me along the time spent on DMsGuild. But in the Old World series, but I took part to other projects like Infamous Adversaries. And the fact is that I don't see some authors that are always better than the other, but I see that when you look to what an author different than you writes gives a different twist, and then you can learn. So what I really learned doing Masters of the Old World and then Artifact and then all the Old World series is that all the authors can bring something, especially in terms of this twist of inventive. And I found this particularly interesting in authors that maybe are not so represented on DMsGuild, maybe because they're not native English speakers. And so they do have small products or a low number of products, but they can bring so much fantasy into the project that you really want them on. Maybe their English is not perfect. Okay, then you have an editor, and that's what the editor is needed for. And I'm thinking this especially in my mind. I have those people that are coming from Nordic countries in Europe and Eastern countries in Europe. You can find some of their entries in the Old World series, and I'm not going to mention all of them because there are many. I don't want to
Yeah.
to miss someone, and also I would have strong problem in pronouncing their names. But I really invite you to go to, even just I don't ask you to buy the books, but even just go to the page of Monsters of the Old World or
Yeah.
Artifact or Heroes, and read the list of authors. They are all there, and you will see their names. Many of them have things that are not really so common in D&D, because they know a folklore and a lore that is not so represented in the mainstream fantasy world. So they really can bring something that is not usually there.
And yeah, you kind of bring up like a fascinating point, which is like you can be like, again, you could be perfectly fluent in English, but if if the spark of like that, the heart of your idea isn't good, it doesn't really mean much. And yeah, it's great when yeah, all these sort of talented people from all over the world, not just Europe, kind of throw their hat into the ring to sort of start publishing on the DMs Guild.
Yeah, I mean, in this moment, the authors that I know the best are just coming from Europe and some of the American authors. But a dream of mine doing the Old World series will be that of inspiring people coming from other continents to do something similar. I would love to see something similar coming from, I don't know, the Northern Africa or the Central Africa or South America, or even I would love to see something about the legends and myths that are embedded in Native Americans, done by someone who's really an expert on that, or in the Far East Asia. Because I mean, of course, we have these things, but we know that the risk of cultural appropriation is always there.
No.
So I would really love to see that these products that we have done, starting from Europe, that is maybe more well known. I would love to see that done in different continents.
I was going to say one thing I definitely want to commend you on is particularly for the Old World series is setting up that thing that the cultures that you are trying to represent, you get people from those cultures to write their stories and stuff like that. So it's the people are coming with folklore of their own nationality, and that way again it's more organic. There isn't necessarily the concerns of as you mentioned, the cultural appropriation, because it's their own culture. And I think that's a very that was a very good way to handle things. Nice. Well, again, looking at the time, we are kind of coming towards like the end of our hour. Again, it always flies by. But one thing I kind of wanted to ask in particular then is kind of what are you working on at the moment? Like you've mentioned before, obviously Tales of the Old World, just right around the corner. Anything else in the works?
Yeah, well, I'm working on another adventure of mine, and that is all set along a river.
Ooh.
So the environment this time is a river, and the idea is a travel from the beginning of the river till the sea. And this is set in a forgotten realms. So also it mentions some of the locations that you can find along the Dalinbir River. And this is the main thing that I'm doing now together with Tales, that it's taking a lot of time. But also one thing that I'm working on is restyling of my old adventures. And the idea is that of having more consistency with all of them to create a bundle of all these adventures that are set in a natural environment. So kind of adventuring in the savage.
Yeah, that's always, again, I think I've spoken about this like once or twice. Like it always is interesting when you look at your older products and again resisting the urge to go back and revisit them with like new knowledge. But it does seem like, yeah, in your case, it kind of makes sense because you have this environmental theme throughout all your products, that it kind of makes sense to kind of give them a similar theming and kind of bundle them all together.
Yeah, that's right.
Exciting. Well, all right then. And then I guess my next question is, okay, well, people who kind of want it, when this river adventure comes out, where's kind of the best place for them to follow you, hear about it, stay up to date with all the news?
Oh well, yeah. The main thing maybe could be to follow me on Twitter, and the handle is Adventurer881, and there I publish also updates of my old adventures and the new adventures that are coming. coming, and also share things that are done by other authors on the guild. So that could be a source of information. And also you can look on Facebook. And for instance, if you're interested in collaborating with a future project, there is a Facebook group that is called the European DMsGuild Creator. And there's a group of people that is larger than those that work to the Old World series. That's just intended to be a place for fine collaboration. So everybody's welcome.
With your permission, I will include the link to the European DMsGuild in the description somewhere, so people listening can join on in. Yeah, I think following the demise of the old DMsGuild Facebook group, may it rest in peace. It's nice that these other sort of communities kind of stem from that. Yeah, well, fantastic. Andrea, again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and chat with me.
Thank you.
This has been an absolute blast. Yeah, I guess I should say that I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. My final question then, to kind of kick things off then, is how do we end a podcast?
Oh, we should ask people to imagine some kind of nice jingle and then...